Okay, we're going to start this lesson by just talking about the basics of graphing, and hopefully you are familiar with these as we talk about them. I have here an X and Y axis, so those typically have arrows on them to show that they continue, and so the horizontal one is your X axis, and the vertical one is your Y axis. And the quadrants are 1, 2, 3, and 4. They go counterclockwise. If you're talking about the axis pair, plural, it's axes with an E. And this middle point, the 0, 0 point, is also called the origin. And again, I hope that's familiar to you. All of your points are of the form X, Y, and it's in alphabetical order if you have trouble remembering things. Something that you might need to know is the names. The X is called the abscissa, and the Y is the ordinate. Just in case you ever see those, I don't want you to be thrown off by those names. Just know names for X and Y. And something else, using the X and Y axis as you have been doing for years, that is called the Cartesian plane or the Cartesian coordinate system. And again, I'm just giving you that so that you're not thrown off if you see that somewhere. Okay, now I just want to remind you how to plot points. If you go, you start at 0, 0. You start at the origin every time. And if you go to the right, that's a positive X. The left is a negative X. If you go up, that's a positive Y. Down is a negative Y. So let's say we wanted to do the point -3, 5. That would tell me that I'll be moving left 3 and up 5. So if I had some nice graph paper, I would go left 3 and up 5, and there would be my point. Another one, 4, 3. 4, 3 would mean, because it's positive, I would go right 4, and then again, because it's positive, I would go up 3. So right 4 and up 3 would put me here. And let's do another one. Let's do -4, -2. So a -4 would send me to the left, a -2 would send me down as my Y value. So -4 means I'm going left 4 from 0, 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And the -2 going down 2. So left 4, down 2 puts me about right here. So that's just a quick reminder of how to plot points. Okay, another kind of problem that you're going to do in this lesson is determining whether these ordered pairs are a solution to a given equation. And our equation is 2x plus 3y equals 18. So the first part is x, the second part is y, and the way that you determine if it is a solution is just by plugging them in. So 2, where the x is, you're going to plug in the -5. And then 3, where this y is, you're going to plug in a 7. And then it equals 18. That is the question. So what you want to do is figure out, does that left side equal 18? Okay, so 2 times -5 is going to give us a -10, and 3 times 7 is 21. And so if I add those two things together, I get 11, and 11 is not 18. So this is, no, it's not a solution. And I come over here to B, and I'm going to check it the same way. I'm going to put 3 in for the X and 4 in for the Y. So 2 times 3 plus 3 times 4. And does that equal 18? So 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 4 is 12. If I add 6 and 12, I do get 18. So yes, I do have a solution with 3, 4. What that means is this point actually falls on this line if you were to graph it. This point does not fall on this line if you were to graph it. Okay, something else that you're going to need to remember how to do is how to graph a line, and they're actually going to ask you to do it the regular y equals mx plus b way that you're probably used to, and they're going to ask you to do it using the x and y intercepts, which is what I'm getting ready to show you. You can always find the x and y intercepts by plugging in 0. So if I plug 0 in for x, you wouldn't want to plug it in obviously for both x and y, but if I plug it in for x, 2 times 0 plus 3y equals 18. That's going to help us find our y-intercept because the x value of anything on the y-axis is 0. 2 times 0 is 0, so I'm just left with 3y on this side. And so I have 3y equals 18. If I divide by 3, I get y to be 6, and that is actually my y-intercept. You need to know that. Then to get my x-intercept, I'm going to plug 0 in for y because every point on the x-axis has an y value of 0. So if I plug that in, I should find where it crosses the x-axis. So 2x plus 3 times 0 should equal 18. And 3 times 0 is 0. So I just have 2x equals 18. And if I divide, x is equal to 9. And again, that is, that 9, sorry, means my x-intercept. Okay, they're going to want you to graph using these two things, and anytime that you're graphing a line, you really just need 2 points because once you connect them, you have the shape that you need. So we know where it crosses the x-axis at 9, and we know where it crosses the y-axis at 6. So for graphing, find 9 on your y-axis, and I don't have nice graph paper, so I'm just going to say it's right there, and 6 on your y-axis. And since we're crossing in those two places, I'm not real good at drawing here, but you just connect it and make your line. And so it's really easy to find the x and y intercepts and to graph using those. Okay, I'm also going to graph this one, but I'm going to use the slope-intercept form. So I'm going to get the y by itself, which means I'm going to need to subtract the 3x, which is going to leave me with negative 5y equals negative 3x minus 10. And then divide by negative 5 everywhere. And that's going to give me y equals a positive 3/5 because I have two negatives, and x and plus 2. So if you remember, this part is your y-intercept, so I know I am crossing the y-axis at 2. And this part is your slope. And that's your rise over your run, so I'm going to rise 3 and run 5, so up 3, right 5. So up from that point at 2, 3, up 3, and right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's where I'm going to put my second point, and again, anytime I have 2 points, I can connect them and make my line. So there's my graph. You also want to make sure you know how to do this in your calculator. So you do need it solved for y, so you need it in slope-intercept form, and you need to know how to plug this part into your calculator and get this graph and get it in a good window. I also want you to take the time to stop and graph a quadratic in your calculator. So type in y equals x squared minus 9x minus 12 and make sure that you can see it. It's shaped like a parabola, and you can see what you need to see in the window, and if you need help, raise your hand and I will help you. Okay, the next thing I'm going to remind you about is the distance formula, and that is the square root of x minus x squared plus y minus y squared. It's all under one square root. And you see some books and teachers say x2 minus x1 and y2 minus y1, and it really doesn't matter because you end up squaring it, so I don't even worry about that because I don't want you to get hung up on what comes first here. And I can also show you where this comes from. It actually comes from the Pythagorean theorem, so if you need that, please raise your hand. Okay, so now that we've talked about it, let's do it. Let's do a couple of distance formula practice problems. First, let's say we have the point -2, +2, and the point 3, -6. And you could plot those and you could guess what the distance is, but we're going to use the formula and get the exact distance. You could also actually plot them and make a triangle and find the distance between them using Pythagorean theorem. So again, that's where the distance formula comes from, but a lot of you might find it easier just to use the distance formula and get that practice in. So I'm going to do the square root of x minus x, and it doesn't matter which one comes first, so I'm going to do 3 minus negative 2, and it is minus. Even though this is a negative, you get both of them in there. And that's squared plus y minus y, so I like 2 minus negative 6 squared. And I like that because both of these situations I have minus the negative, and that becomes plus positive. Just makes it prettier to me. And so 3 plus 2 is 5, and I have 5 squared. And 2 plus 6 is 8, and I have 8 squared. So this is the square root of 25 plus 64. And so 5 and 4 is 9, 6 and 2 is 8. It's the square root of 89, which you might can break down, or you may type it in and need a decimal form of that. So there's your example of the distance formula. Okay, somewhere else that this comes in handy is with circles. And let's say that you have a circle and you know that the center is 3, negative 1. And then somewhere on that circle is the point negative 2, 5. So you have the center and you have the point negative 2, 5. And just a really rough sketch. So here's your center. If that's at 3, negative 1, then negative 2, 5 would be back here somewhere. So if I wanted to find what the radius of that circle is, the radius would be just the distance between those 2 points. And so this can help us out in a situation like that. My radius is going to equal my distance, and so I'm going to use that distance formula and figure out what that is. So I have square root x minus x squared, so 3 minus negative 2 squared, plus y minus y, and I like my minus negatives, so 5 minus negative 1 squared. And continue on with my calculations. I get plus a positive, so that would be 5 squared, and here plus a positive 6 squared. So I have 5 squared is 25, 6 squared is 36. And that means that my radius is the square root of 61, which if I need a decimal so I can actually draw it, I can just type that in my calculator and figure that part out. Okay, you also have to remember the midpoint formula, which if you're trying to find the middle of something, the middle of your grades, you average them, you add them up, and you divide by how many you have. So if we have 2 points and we're trying to find the middle, we're going to add them up and divide by 2. And that's how I remember it. It's x plus x over 2 and y plus y over 2. And again, teachers or textbooks will put x sub 2 and sub 1, or y sub 2 and sub 1, and it really doesn't matter which order you add in, it's going to come up to the same amount. So I just put x plus x and y plus y. Whatever works for you and whatever you're used to is fine. So let's practice this. Let's say we have the point negative 4, negative 2, and the point 2, 5, and we want to find the middle. So all we do is add up our x's. So negative 4 plus 2, and we're going to divide that by 2. And add up our y's, negative 2 plus 5, and we're going to divide that by 2. And so that's going to give us negative 4 and 2 is a negative 2. Still dividing by 2. Negative 2 and 5 is a 3. Still dividing by 2. And that first one I can reduce and make negative 1. And I can write the 3 halves as 1.5 or 3 halves depending on what I need. Okay, the midpoint can also be useful in circle kind of problems. Here's an example. I have the diameter of a circle connects the points 2, negative 3, and 6, 4 on the circle. Find the coordinates on the center. So here's the thing. If it's the diagonals that are connecting, or not diagonals, excuse me, the diameter that's connecting these 2 points, that means that the center has to be on it, because the diameter goes through the center by definition. So the middle of these two lines, the middle of this segment that is the diameter is the center, so we find the midpoint. You have 2 plus 6 over 2 and negative 3 plus 4 over 2. And so that's going to give us 8 over 2 and 1 over 2, which is 4 1/2 or 4.5, whatever you need. And that would be the center of the circle that they're describing. Okay, the next thing I want you to remember is the equation of a circle. I've obviously mentioned circles already, and they're going to come up. So you should be familiar with the equation of the circle, which is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. A lot of people are good with this, remembering that the center is hk. But the radius is just r, and you're used to seeing this equation with the r being squared because you will see the number, and you have to remember that the radius is the square root of the whole number that shows up over here. So if you've made a mistake, check that r relationship and see if that's where it was. First kind of problem is easy. It's finding the equation of the circle. They're giving you the radius, which is 5, and the center, which is 3, negative 7. So you start out setting it up, and I just leave my blanks where I need to fill things in. And I'm going to plug in my center first. So I'm going to plug in 3 and negative 7. And then my radius over here, I have to remember to square it. So this takes a little bit of work. I have x minus 3 squared. Here I have minus a negative, so that's going to become y plus 7 squared. And then 5 squared is 25, so you do need to simplify it. And some people can just jump to this line because they just changed the signs. It was a positive 3 here, it's a negative 3 in the equation. It was a negative 7 in the point, and it's a positive 7 in the equation, and then you just have to square the radius. So if you can jump to that line, that's okay. Okay, for our last example here, we're just going to go over sketching your circle, and it says graph it, and I say sketch because I can't draw a perfect circle, and I don't know that you can if you don't have a compass. So we're going to do our best to sketch. And so to do that, you need to identify the center and the radius. So if you look, your center, just like we talked about, it'll have the opposite signs of what it does in the equation. So it should be a negative 5 and a positive 2. And then our radius is the square root of 16. So our radius is 4. So the way that I'm going to sketch it is I'm going to find negative 5, 2. And I'm going to plot that. And that's just for my location. The actual circle, when you graph it, is the edge. Okay, the center just helps you locate things. So from there, since my radius is 4, I'm going to count 4 to the left of the center and put a dot. And I'm going to count 4 to the right and put a dot. And 4 up from the center and 4 down from the center. And like I said, mine's not perfect. It's kind of going to be odd shaped. And then I try to make those a circle to the best of my ability. Just a little bit difficult. But that's what I'm going to be looking for from you is the center in the right place? Is the radius, are you trying to go 4 from the center in all directions? So that's how I check that kind of thing for you. If you need help remembering any of these topics, a little more than what I have in this video, please do not hesitate to ask, and you will have time to do that.